Academy. Thanks for taking out time in attending this webinar. Um, I hope everybody is staying safe in this unforeseen circumstances of COVID. So stay home, stay safe and healthy. Congratulations to all of you. So all of you are looking forward to take your first step in the career, and we also have some people in the audience who have already kickstarted their career. All of you have chosen to pursue software industry as your profession, and I can assure you that it is one of the most promising careers in today's world. But before we enter into the actual details of the our program, I just want to talk a few words about the career itself. When anybody chooses a profession, what is it that they are looking for? I think there are two major things which everybody looks at. One is the nature of work in the profession, meaning what is it that we are going to do, and what impact our work is going to have on this world. And software industry, the software profession has huge impact in today's world. In fact, even the entire world is locked down today due to COVID scenario. We are still attending this webinar. We are still pursuing our passion to learn and progress in our careers. So software has a huge role to play in this uh, scenario. And second part is the financial prospects the career is going to provide. So the financial stability it offers, and also the kind of growth one can expect in the career. So with these 2 points, let's move ahead. So when we look at the financial prospects of software profession, broadly we can view two types of roles in software industry. One is service-based profile, and the other is product-based profile. I will elaborate a little bit more in the later slides, but when we look at the financial aspect of software career, these two roles have completely different and drastic offerings for the professionals. We have a snapshot of the salary growth in these two profiles. So the programming, if you look at the graph, there are two legends there. One is programming, which is in red. One is in blue, which is non-programming. So programming, by programming, we mean product-based roles, and by non-programming, we mean service-based roles. So remember that we are talking about software industry. So don't confuse with non-programming like pure mechanical or civil roles. We are not talking about that. That is beyond the scope of our program. So if we look at this graph, the programming roles grow at a very steep rate, whereas the service-based roles or non-programming roles, the salary stagnates pretty early. And if we look at a 10-year span, which is what this graph shows, the product-based roles offer 5 times more salary than what service-based roles are offering. So naturally, uh, anybody who has a choice will always want to take up product based roles, which is the programming based roles. But what is the difference between these two roles? Why is there such a drastic difference in the pay scale here? To understand that, we also need to understand the nature of these roles. What is the expectation in a service based role? What is the nature in a product based roles? So product based roles, by product based roles we mean uh, the teams or the sort of work that actually contributes to direct development or uh, maintenance of the product itself, mainly engineering roles actually. So these are the teams which actually come up with the ideas for what product to build. They also come up with what market to address this. Do we have the market or not? And how to make this. They come up with the solutions and how to offer these solutions to the users themselves. So this is the primary expectation in product-based roles. and they are the torch bearers for these products, meaning they are the faces of the products. They do all the primary work required for the product. Coming to the service based role, those are mostly secondary requirements for the products. So they could range anywhere from a support role. Support could be either it could be technical support, it could be customer support, infrastructure support, any sort of that, which are secondary to the product itself. So they don't exist if the product doesn't exist, and a product can exist even without service based roles as well. So to give an example of how this works, uh, we can talk about the evolution of cloud uh, infrastructure. So in the initial days of software boom, which is like 90s and early 2000s, so each company used to have its own set of servers, its own set of data centers, its own hardware, in fact, on their own premises. So wherever the company has its office, they used to maintain their own hardware, and they also need uh, workforce to actually support that. But in today's world, most of you might have already heard about Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud Services, and such offerings, where these servers or data centers are no longer needed to be present in the premise of the company itself. They can subscribe to these cloud offerings, and the maintenance and the scalability, availability, all these features of the data centers or servers is managed by a few cloud offerers, which are like AWS or Google Cloud Services. So if you think of a person who works in this cloud infrastructure domain, so 10 or 15 years back, they used to have roles or jobs throughout the world. You know, each company has its own set of hardware in its own premises, so there were jobs and roles available for everybody. But in today's world, it's not like that. Most of the companies no longer maintain these by themselves. There is a handful of companies in a handful of locations with their hardware. That is huge hardware, which they cater to all the subscribers. So if a person knows how to configure a server, how to work with a server remotely, and how to manage it remotely, that person has same opportunities in the earlier scenario where each company maintains its own hardware, and in today's scenario as well, where there are cloud offerings. So in fact, there are more, since the number of companies and the business has increased manifold, such roles are even more today. So a person with such skills, remotely manageable skills, can find jobs even in the older scenario or in today's requirements as well. But think of a person who knows only like maintaining the hardware or installing the hardware but doesn't know much about programming it. It will be very difficult for such a person to find a job in today's world. That person has to learn new skills which are applicable in today's world and then start from scratch. So the second sort of jobs are, we are talking about the service based roles, whereas the first one is a product based role. So the set of skills you develop in a product based roles are transferable skills, and they remain relevant no matter what the requirement of the day are. The requirements have changed over time, but the skills remain applicable even though the requirements change. Whereas in a service-based roles, the skills you develop are specific to the requirements that are today. If the requirements change, you have to change your skills as well. So as a result, the people in service-based roles are difficult to adapt to new requirements. That's why uh, the salaries stagnate in that. There is actually one more important point for the stagnation of salaries: the way the money is pumped into these roles. In a product based role, as a product succeeds, the rate of success is much higher than the rate at which the team grows. You can take example of any product, for example Google search engine. You know, the users increase day by day at a very high rate, you know, but the engineering team behind the search engine did not grow at the same rate. So as the business expands, there is a lot of money, lot of revenue that is being generated out of the product, but the team is small enough, so the per capita income of the product is much higher, and hence product based companies are in a position to pay higher salaries. Whereas in a service based roles, these are mostly outsourced jobs where a product based company charges a service based company in terms of headcount. So if I require 10 people to maintain my infrastructure, I'll pay $500 per person, so which accounts to $5,000. That's what the service based company gets, and that is divided among the 10 people. Now today, if as a product based company I say no, I only need two people to support my thing, I will pay only $1,000. And tomorrow if I require more, I'll increase the pay, I mean increase the headcount. If I don't need so much headcount, I'll reduce the headcount. So here it's directly proportional to the number of people on the project, and naturally the money that is present in this project is also lesser, and hence the service based companies are not in a position to pay higher salaries. This is also one of the most important reasons why the pay scale stagnates much early in a service based role. So now, fine, we have service based roles, we have product based roles, and it has been that way. I mean, that service based products companies have existed earlier, they do exist today also. Product based companies existed earlier, they exist today also. But why are we talking about this today? What has changed? So over time, so in the initial stages, again, we have to look at how software industry has evolved in India. So we are talking in Indian context. What has changed in Indian context? In the initial days, the jobs that are available in India were mostly outsourced by product-based companies, which resided overseas, did not have any branches in India. They required some service-based roles. They were outsourced to India, and those were the jobs that were available throughout India in those days. But in today's world, with globalization, with the increase of internet, product-based companies have started establishing their own development centers even outside their own countries. And India is one of the topmost choices for the companies to establish development centers. You might have heard in news, there is a new Amazon development center that is being established in Noida. Google has a second largest office in the world in Hyderabad, and similarly Microsoft's Hyderabad office is the second largest development center of Microsoft throughout the world and the largest outside USA. You know, so with this, and also with startup boom in India, there are a lot of product-based companies that are coming up in India. Today, if we look at the proportion or the composition of the jobs in India, it's not service-based roles dominated seen today. There are a lot of product-based roles also. So there is a lot of demand for product-based roles in India, unlike some 10, 15 years back. But when we look at what companies say when they hire, most of the companies, they are not happy with the kind of candidates they are interviewing for the product based roles. They say that the candidates do not have the required set of skills. There are a lot of engineering graduates that are being produced every year in India on one hand, and on the other hand, these companies are saying we don't find the right set of skills among the candidates. So there is a lot of demand, in fact, growing demand for product based roles on one hand, and on the other hand, the supply is not up to the mark. So there is a huge gap between the demand and supply. So the companies are willing to pay higher salaries, but they are not finding the right set of candidates. So why is this? We have a lot of graduates, but they say they don't have the skills. They are not complaining whether the ability of the candidates to do the work. In fact, what they are doing is they hire these fresh graduates, they train them for a lot of time on different skills, and then after a few months they start contributing to the project. This is fine with big companies like Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Adobe. They can afford to spend so much of resources in training the new candidates and wait for them to contribute. But for think of a startup where there is a lot of constraint on the budget, on the timeline. They have their own deadlines. They want to release the product as soon as possible to the public. They cannot afford to spend so many resources on a new candidate. So such startups are actually looking for people who can contribute from day one. They are ready to pay high salaries, but they cannot wait for people to join and then contribute only after 6 months or 7 months. That's completely not acceptable for a startup. And even big companies also look for those such candidates who can contribute from day one. And when we looked at these trends and identified that there is such a huge gap between supply and demand, we realized, why can't we bridge this gap? And we, the team at 10x Academy, we are from top tier institutions in India, having a lot of experience, extensive experience with product based companies and MNCs, both startups and big companies. We realize that it's not that the candidates are not capable of doing the job. They have the potential, they have the talent, but they only lack the skills. So skill is something that can be learned and groomed. So we realize that this gap can be fulfilled if we actually impart these skills to fresh or recent graduates. And that way they can actually take advantage of this new changed uh, job scenario in India. They can actually tap into the high paying jobs and need not stuck inside service based roles where, after some time it's actually very difficult for you to grow. And at some point, actually, you may even, some people in service based sector, they even face a dilemma as to whether continue in the service based sector or completely switch to a different profession, because after some point the growth is stunted and you cannot go beyond without learning new skills. And after spending 10 to 15 years in the same industry, it's very difficult to adapt yourself to the new skill. You really need a lot of motivation. So to avoid this scenario, we came up with the 10x Academy Bootcamp, where we will enable the fresh graduates with the right set of skills which are transferable, which will remain relevant even after 10 years from now. Here we have two salient features of our programming bootcamp. First thing is, we firmly believe that money should not be a hindrance to learning. If somebody wants to learn, they should be having access to the relevant resources, and the passion to learn itself is a qualification to learn. So as part of this bootcamp, we are not going to charge any fees upfront. Until the end of bootcamp, until you get a job, you will only need to focus on the learning part and stepping into the right career. And the second part is being industry ready. So I talked about the restrictions which different companies have, both in terms of deadlines, budget, and a lot of things, and they want people who can contribute from day one. So with this boot camp, we are going to make you industry ready. Now, what is industry ready? We are talking about software profession. Now, what is software profession? You have to program, you have some problem to solve, you write software to solve that problem and release it. That's it. So what is so big about being industry ready, and what is it something you are going to learn in this boot camp which you haven't learned in your college? I believe every one of you would have done one or other project in as part of your curriculum. You would have done that either individually or maybe in groups of 2 or 3 people at max, and maybe one professor guiding you. So you would have picked up some one small problem. Each of you would have done some coding on program, and then you show it to a professor as a presentation, and that's the end of it. But in industry, that's not how it works. You know, there are a lot of elements which contribute to the success of a product. Being able to program or being able to code in one language like Python or Java, that's not the only skill that is important. There are a lot of other skills. That is an important skill, but that alone is not sufficient. So as part of industry, you will have to deal with colleagues of your own age, of your same experience as you, colleagues with much higher experience than you, engineers. And then you also have to deal with product managers, program managers, marketing experts. All these elements work together toward the contribution of the business. Remember, the market directs what is done in your company. So it's very important that whatever anybody in the team is doing, that should contribute towards the success of the product. And that can happen only if you have a rounded knowledge of the product itself and the software engineering practices. And software engineering is a lot more than simply coding. There is a planning phase where you understand the problem statement, you understand the market today, what are the requirements of the market, and then you identify what is the problem that is important today, what is that we should solve. Once you have that problem, you will validate whether that really has worth or not. Are people really looking for a solution for this? Is this going to be useful to the public? Now, once we have that, we come to the design phase, where you factor in all the constraints you have. You could have constraints on money. Only so much money we have. We can't spend more than this amount of money. We have only this number of people, only these resources. We have only this set of skills. We don't have somebody who is expert in cloud infrastructure. We don't have an expert in data science. So within these constraints, you have to come up with a solution. And once you design a solution, remember, designing a solution is not same as implementing the solution. You design the solution and then you enter at the actual development phase. This is the probably the longest phase, and the phase where most of you will be contributing in terms of coding, testing. You implement, you test it, you find issues, you fix them, again you test them, find issues. This cycle continues. And once we have sufficient confidence in the product, we then go for the deployment phase or the release phase, where the public gets to see our product. And then once the public starts using this product, we get feedback from them. Some of them may say, oh, this is very beautiful, this is exactly what I was looking for, thank you for this product. And somebody might say, this is very nice, but I would have liked if you had this one extra feature. We get this feedback. So when people say, this is not working, somebody might say, you have this product, you say you are going to send my email within 2 seconds, but the email hasn't yet reached to the person yet. So we get feedback from the public as well. And then same cycle, we get back the feedback, we think about it, we design solutions, we implement it, release it, get feedback, and this cycle continues. So in this process, just coding up is not sufficient. When a problem statement comes to you, when somebody asks you to implement a feature, you should also understand what is the importance of that feature. How is it going to make a difference to the customer? And what are the designs that are given to me by the designer? Are there any gaps there? Are there any engineering restrictions which we can't achieve? The designer may ask something, I want a button which with a drop down, which which understands my intent, my voice. I speak up and then it works. There might be engineering limitations there. Then you have to work with the design team. You have to work with the product management team saying, oh, this is not achievable, but we can do it in a different way. So software engineering, coding is a very important part of software engineering, but for you to really succeed in this profession, to actually get to places, you have to have a rounded knowledge of the product. And this is what we mean by industry ready. But fine, how do we get there? We talked about the difference between talent versus skill. Skill is something which can be groomed, which can be learned. So as part of our boot camp, we are going to impart those skills to you. We will make you self-sufficient in being able to grow in the career. So what does that mean? Like I said, our team is a pretty experienced team, having worked with multiple companies, both startups and big companies. And most of us have been on hiring panels where we interview candidates, we question them, we evaluate them, and then we either select them or not select them. So we know what the companies look for, and we know what skills they are watching out for. With this experience, we have created a very uh, career oriented program for you guys, where you will learn the core skills, the core engineering skills for the software profession, which are data structures, algorithms, and coding, programming and problem solving skills. The next important part of this program is practice. Nothing beats practice. Not just for software industry, for any industry, any profession, practice is the key. And in this program, you are going to do 6 hours practice per day for 5 months. So it's all learning by doing. There will be a classroom part, an online class where a teacher will be teaching certain concepts to you, but that is only one small aspect of our program. The distinctive aspect, what is the difference between this boot camp and your regular college or other online courses? It is the practice part. It is learning by doing. You actually solve real world problems and learn that way. Until you actually step into waters, or until you get your hands dirty, you will not be up to mark to work in the industry. And when you do this, believe me, you will be miles apart from your colleagues who have just joined the profession. And the most important part of our boot camp, I would say, is apprenticeship. So till now we have talked about core skills, how they stand the test of time, how they are applicable even though the requirements change, and practice everything. They are of no use if you don't put them, if you don't build something that is usable by others. Knowing something is of not much importance unless that is useful to others, right? That is apprenticeship. And this actually this is the star of our program, I would say. When we talked about industry ready, this apprenticeship phase will actually take you through all those phases: planning phase, design phase, implementation, release, all these phases, and working with a team. Remember, here you will actually work in a team. In this phase, you will come up with an idea. You will exercise that part of your brain where you identify problems, you come up with solutions, and then you will discuss with an experienced team on the other side. So we are we as mentors to you, we will actually guide you through the planning and design phase and implementation phase as well. And you will also learn some very important tools when working in a team, for example version control. So apprenticeship phase will take you through all these things, and at the end of apprenticeship phase you will actually have a product which you can release to your friends, in fact to the entire public. But you can actually persuade your friends to actually use it and get a feedback on what you have built. And this will be a highlight of your resume. Okay, till now we have developed the core skills that are required for this software profession. But how do you actually enter that world? You need to go through a gateway. What is that gateway? That gateway is the interviews, the hiring process. It's not sufficient that you have the skills and the talent. It's also equally important that you exhibit those skills, you communicate your skills to the potential recruiter. How to write about it on your resume, how to present yourself in an interview, right? All these things are very important. So in addition to this imparting skills, teaching, apprenticeship, project, mentoring, we also have career services. You know, we will we will help you build your resumes. We will mentor you. We will take you through mock interviews so that when you are actually on campus for an interview, it's like something which you have been doing all the way. There is nothing new there, and so you need not feel anxious, and you can simply go through the interview process just like we walk without thinking. So you give an interview without much problems. So we also have career services. In short, this program is going to be intensive, meaning lot of practice. This is very important. This is something which I sincerely request each one of you to have at the back of your mind, that you have to commit yourself to this boot camp. You have to dedicate your full attention to this boot camp to take full advantage of this. It's going to be very intensive. Innovative. Why is it innovative? You can compare this with other modes. Academy. Thanks for taking out time in attending this webinar. Um, I hope everybody is staying safe in this unforeseen circumstances of COVID. So stay home,